I love the whole thing that then I saw this week. Was it this week or last week after the Celtic game? Was it where they played Lazio and they had that like? They had all the banners up about that. Yeah, Mussolini's a big old bitch.
Yeah.
And then his granddaughter was like, that's Ducephobia or whatever.
Seriously? That's what it, oh my god.
She's really starting to try and get that word.
Oh no, it's silencing me again.
It's not silencing you.
It is.
No, it isn't.
Hello.
You're number 4.
Hello.
Test.
Testing.
1,
Didn't
2.
she want to introduce a bill or something to make it illegal? To make criticism of Mussolini illegal.
Is that working?
It is working. You're number 4.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
Hello. Oh, I am number 4.
No, I guess I'll do this in the meantime while we're trying to get our levels right. Okay, keep going. Yeah, keep talking.
But yeah, no, she's really trying to get that whole Dolce-phobia thing off the ground, which I
Dolce-phobia? Were you afraid of sweets?
No, Duce-phobia, not Dolce. God damn it.
Dolce-phobia.
Yeah, Nick, cut that. Make it sound like I know Italian.
That's what they don't say it in the history books, but the Daily Show in fascist Italy would always take him down by calling him Il Dolce instead of. There's no way he's coming back from this. Mussolini's done for.
That'll save the Ethiopians. We did it.
Hey, welcome to your weekly Corner Spti. I'm your host, Nick, joined by the full gang of myself, Rob.
Hey.
Kieran.
Yep.
Yulia.
Hi.
No one had a joke. Wow, that's like the first time ever.
We don't want to embarrass ourselves.
It is a serious episode.
And we have a very special guest today, one that I've wanted to have on this show since we did it, and I kind of just like spitballed it that it'd be fun, and we actually got him on. So,
just because I slid into his DMs.
Because Yulia slid into his DMs, exactly.
Slid, that's so. Okay.
You're fine. We have Kerem Schamberger here to talk about how Turkey is good and how there's no ethnic cleansing happening. This is a TRT World podcast.
TRT Deutsch. No.
TRT Deutsch, exactly. But in English.
Who would be the Bill Gates of TRT? Because Bill Gates famously just bankrolling Vox and just gets complete softball interviews. Yeah, so I don't know what billionaire would be funding TRT.
Gabriel, maybe.
There you have it.
Or I don't know, who's like a really big Turkish billionaire? Are there billionaires in Turkey? I don't know. We'll find that out.
This sounds like a Mega Rika episode.
Yeah.
Which we don't.
We don't have time for a Mega Rika at the moment.
I know.
We'll come back to that.
Good.
What is Turkey's billionaire? I'll check. Don't worry. I'll check right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we originally wanted to have Kerem just come on and just talk about Rojava in Kurdistan and why that's good for the left and all that. However, in recent in the recent news cycle of the past month with the invasion of northern Syria, this topic is probably even more relevant now with the geopolitical situation, the situation for the left and all that. So yeah.
You also didn't say like welcome Kerem, and you're like hi, thanks.
Oh, sorry, I can do that.
You could say we're
welcome, Kerem.
Hi.
How are you this fine evening?
Yeah, I'm quite fine. Yeah.
How was your trip from Munich? Was it good?
Actually, I'm coming from Erlangen right now because I had some stuff to do there.
That's like an hour away from Munich.
No, it's 2 hours. It's
okay.
It's 2 hours.
I'm bad at my German geography. But
I heard Ireland. Okay. All right, move on. Ignore me.
So I guess just very in your briefest way that you possibly can, summarize thousands of years of history of the Kurds and who they are and why they don't have a state. And no, I'm just kidding. How is the situation then of like, let's say, I don't know, since the Syrian civil war has developed, how have the Kurds then once again become a thorn in Turkey's side? Because this has a history that's been going on for a long time, and obviously we can't, like I said, we can't bring thousands of years of a cultural, group to, fully talk about it. But nonetheless, like just your quickest overview of that.
Actually, I wouldn't say that the Kurds living in northern Syria are like threatening Turkey in any way. Like I think they took the opportunity during the beginning of the civil war, which is also an international war in 2011, 2012, that like the Assad regime got weakened, and so it had to retreat from some spaces or areas in Syria, and the Kurds, together with several other ethnic minorities, took the possibility and established so-called self-governing structures. Kind of a council democracy, like in German we call it Rätedemokratie. We have some experiences with that in Munich as well, 100 years ago, Kurt Eisner, for example. And I think Turkey is afraid that this Rojava thing could spread over to like the Kurds living in Turkey as well. And if you look in the last 4 or 5 years, actually there were some developments going into that direction. I think after the collapse of the so-called peace talks between the Turkish government and the Kurdish freedom movement, which were ended by AKP and Erdogan, the people in different Kurdish cities said, okay, if there is no like possibility to solve this thing or this problem by negotiating with the state, we're gonna take our destiny in our own hands. And then they said, okay, we're gonna establish self-governing structures like our friends in northern Syria did already. And like the reaction, like in Turkey, but also in northern Syria, what we are experiencing right now is like devastating. It's like in 2015, 2016. The Turkish army killed 4,000 or 5,000 people in Kurdish Turkish areas, and now it is doing the same again. And I think the underlying main or core reason for that is that the way of living, which is adored or presented by Kurdish people, is not fitting to the idea of a nation state which was established in 1923, which we call Turkish Republic now, because they just know one identity, Turkish, male Sunni, and Kurds are not Turkish. They are not just Sunni, they are also Alevi, they are also Yazidi, they are also Christians, and there are that's where for them the women issue is also very important. So that's why it's threatening the core or the fundament of the Turkish state, and that's why it's waging the war right now against northern Syria.
Yeah, actually, I would like to ask you if you could like elaborate on like the significance of Rojava for the international left and like its organizational structure and like something like about like what is actually going on there, like what is happening, why is it important for us, for example, as the left?
5 people sitting
as
in Germany.
5 people sitting at
If
a
you
table.
explicitly explain how it's important to me,
Why should
person you
Kieran-
just met.
Irish guy, probably for you it would be
Oh,
important
yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
No, I don't know how your feelings were in the last weeks. Like for me, of course I haven't lived back then, but for example in April 1939, when the fascist dictatorship of Franco won and declared its victory, I think it must have been the same feelings for the people, or when we woke up on the 11th or 12th of September 1973 when Allende was murdered by Pinochet's fascist thugs. So I think we are like, if we are not able to resist this, we will be experiencing a global defeat of the global left. So it's not just a Kurdish thing, it's not just a thing for leftists in the Middle East. I think it's very important for all leftist or progressive socialist and communist people around the whole world, because Rojava was and still is, of course, the living example that society is changeable. It's a kind of a concrete utopia. Of course, with a lot of shortcomings and a lot of problems. I mean, it is war at the end. It's war, but this war opened the gate or the window to create something new, like based on, as I told you, council democracy, feminism, ecology, which is very important not just for the Kurdish people but also as well for us.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, just to like quickly interject, there was always kind of, because we were kind of talking amongst ourselves about this question in a similar historical context, and that was kind of like the same things that we more or less came up with. Is that like there are a lot of parallels to like the Spanish Civil War, yeah, like you mentioned with Chile as well, and how then seeing then what happens when that opportunity. I mean, given the Spanish Civil War had a bunch of other crazy things happen. I mean, I've seen that then you can compare Syria either to Spain in the 30s or Greece in the 40s.
Okay.
With just like factions everywhere, just breaking up entirely, you know, and both in those situations failed, you know, and it's kind of interesting to then see how you have this blip of history that then could actually, what is been such like a beacon of hope for the left, of having then like what you were saying, the women's movement, the you know, local, so what's it called? The what's the English word for Republik? I don't even know, like political council democracy,
Republic.
council republic. I don't
It's
know.
just like
Oh,
translated.
You're the native
Democratic
speaker, it's not-
Confederation.
Yeah, seriously. It's like,
Yeah, democratic confederalism is like
yeah.
Öcalan's like general theme,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just.
I
it
also
is-
said Räterepublik because this is like the term.
I
don't
kept trying
know,
to
it's
translate
like,
that. The only thing that would ever come
I
up is
know.
Soviet. I don't want to use the word Soviet because
Yeah, because it's not exactly
Yeah.
a Soviet thing, because
Yeah.
like people are not organized by being soldiers, workers, women. They're organized in the places where they're actually living, in the villages, in the parts of the cities.
Yeah, I think there has been like an inspiration. There has been movements in particularly Western Europe and actually in Catalonia, ironically, that have been kind of inspired by this. And it's usually the term they would use is radical municipalism.
okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we'll stick with that then.
With a democracy from below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a centralized democracy, but from below.
Then I guess like on that, just simply on that, like how like what does then this democratic action in Kurdistan look like? Because what I think what people typically see is just like the militant aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, but
The
to
fighters,
then,
yeah.
which is good, obviously, fighting against ISIS and against fascism is always good. But then how at the same time too, like this cultivation of an actual, what I would argue is the beginnings of a socialist project or a socialist state.
Mm-hmm.
What differs then in Rojava that then is differs to then previous projects that we've seen of this or other examples of socialism? Like what makes, like there is something like genuinely unique about this project that like needs some dissecting, like.
So actually, the fighting thing, the military thing, I would say is just 20-30%.
Yeah.
Of course, right now during the war of aggression, it's way higher. But when there is no concrete war, it's like not the most important thing. If you go to the Kandil Mountains, it's a mountainous region in the northern Iraq, South Kurdistan, where the PKK headquarters is located. I talked to the people there. And also there, fighting is not the main thing. The main thing is education. Educating yourself and educating the people around you or the people with whom you are in contact with. And the same thing was happening in Rojava too. For example, I went there last year for 4 weeks to conduct some research for my doctoral thesis. It's about Kurdish journalism. But what I experienced there, that they're having established structures on changing the society, not by force, but by like conviction, Überzeugung,
Yeah. Convincing.
by convincing people. For example, the women movement, which is a huge move. I would say it's the biggest women movement in the world. They have established in every city and also in every little parts of the city some like women centers where women can come together and discuss their problems in their daily life, but also political stuff. But it's not just for the women. For example, I talked to a comrade from the women's movement, and she told me, for example, when we're having a man or a husband who's beating his wife or is not letting his young daughters go to university, they are telling the man, okay, you have to come to the center, and then we're going to discuss with him. And so, for example, I think if we would have a look at the German left, or I don't know, at the American left, they would immediately say, "Fuck you!
Exactly.
You're a patriarch. We don't want to
Talk to
to
you."
talk to you." And there, they are actually talking to each other and trying to convince people. And this convincing can also mean that he has to go to a seminar or lectures for 4 weeks in a row. So that like they believe that this structural societal change just comes by changing the mind of the people. It's like it's kind of a bit of a voluntarism, so they don't want to use force that much. But of course, at the end, when the man still continues to beat his wife or children, then they can take the children or the daughters away, and at the end they have the Women's Protection Units, YPJ. They have guns. So
say it like that. They have guns.
This is just one example. I think the most important thing is this academy system. For every single part of the society, you have different kind of academies. So I was doing Kurdish journalism studies there. They have academies for people who want to get into the profession of journalism, and but they have it for everything. For example, they have an own science called genealogy. It's the science of the women, and there are like researching the ancient history of matriarchy, for example, in that region, and the whole history of women, which is very interesting. And they have it like this academies for every part, for economy, for education, for basic stuff, for energy, for example. They're having okay.
Yeah.
No, like, I just want to confirm something there. Is like when the man has been found to be beating, his wife or the kids or whatever, he then has to go discuss this at the women's center or in another forum.
No. So of course there are women's centers where only women are allowed.
Okay, yeah.
Or days where only women are allowed in these centers. But of course,
it's called Ladies' Night. Okay, we have it in the U.S. as well.
I wouldn't say that. Tell that the ladies over there. I think you would try it once.
I'll have to go to a 4-week seminar now.
Definitely.
Well, we've been trying to send Nick to one of these 4-week seminars, but we don't have the guns.
It's very hard to control him without guns.
Actually, it's something very serious because they had some impact on the society, and I think that's important to discuss right now. Even if Turkey is successful in destroying the self-governing structures, I don't think it will be 100%, but now the threats are really high. But even if it will be successful, these changes in the minds of the members of the society are still there. All the knowledge is there. All the self-organizing structures still exist in some way, even if it is in the underground. That's also what gives me hope, because these changes can't be destroyed by war and bombs and guns.
That is true. Actually, yeah. When we talk about this, and now that that you've explained it, it's kind of, I find it interesting that there are some leftist groups, like in America, for example, that see Rojava as something that is like a proxy thing of this, like of the US or something, especially because they were irritated, saying like, oh yeah, because they work together with with US forces and stuff like that.
Saying they work together is also like
not work together, not work together, but but tankies, not tankies, but
they're tankies.
Yeah, American tankies, kind of say that, like criticize it. I had discussions with people saying like, yeah, but it's not perfect, it's not flawless. Of course, it's not flawless. I mean, seriously, have you seen like something like a project like this that is flawless, or like? Even you don't have anything that you can compare it to right now. Like, okay, we did the comparison with
two
Spanish
examples in history that did not fail.
Exactly.
Obviously, Spain and Greece. They are both perfectly socialist. Nothing bad has ever happened since then. Neither one of those countries was divulged immediately into fascism.
Now, hang on, Nick. I'm not willing to support any socialist project unless it's 100% perfect, which I'm sure will happen any day now.
You already gave the answers. No, I think like from a Marxist point of view, you have to distinguish between strategy and tactics.
Yeah.
So the Kurdish freedom movement is very well aware of the U.S. imperialism being the biggest threat in the Middle East. But actually, right now, it's also saying the regional Russian imperialism also is a threat also to Rojava, what we are experiencing right now. But I think the comrades or the cadres who are doing the strategy thing, they know about the character of U.S. imperialism, and they know that the U.S. wasn't helping the Kurds in their self-governing structures. They were just working together because tactically seen, it made sense for both sides to defeat ISIS. I mean, it was the US policies which made the ground for an organization like ISIS to grow after 2003, after the Iraq War, and that's what also the Kurdish comrades are saying all the time. But I think you can see that the working together only happened in military things. There were no political connections at all between the self-governing structures and politics in the US, or political structures in the US, and that on both sides made very clear that it's just a tactical approach of working together. And I think what the Kurds were trying to do is trying to negotiate in between the splits inside the US and the Russian imperialism in some ways. So moving together, sometimes together and then against each other. And actually the same thing is now done by Turkey. Turkey is not a huge imperialist power, it's a regional hegemonical player. And Turkey is now on this side using the splits and the discussions and the animosities between the US and the Russian policy. So that's why both sides allowed Turkey to occupy a certain part of northern Syria, Rojava, even though they know that they already have occupied Afrin, Jarablus, Azaz, etc.
The thing that I always found just really kind of interesting with that argumentation that it is like a weird U.S. front thing or whatever is that they had no NATO protection. Like the YPG was being bombed simultaneously by Turkey, while apparently the U.S. was then working with them. And I always find that to be like a very weird thing to then, if you are confronted within that discussion of someone being like, oh yeah, no, they're a CIA op, they're this, that, they're working for the U.S. It's like, well, if that was the case, then Turkey, they wouldn't have another NATO nation bombing the absolute shit out of them just as while they're trying to prevent ISIS from advancing or pushing them back into Raqqa and whatnot.
Well, wasn't it also that at some point, even though the U.S. troops were not were ordered not to get involved anymore, that you had Syrian troops trying to get into the area, and you had U.S. troops holding them from entering actually the city or the battle site.
Yeah, we have seen these movements, but just for 2 or 3 days. I think at the end there were just movements that the U.S. troops were holding back the Assad troops for some days so that they can bomb their own bases. What they were doing to 2 or 3 bases in northern Syria while they were retreating, so they need some days. So I think it was just a matter of days. But actually, NATO is 100% supporting Turkey. Stoltenberg went to Turkey and said, "We understand," I quote, "the legitimate security interests of Turkey," which is, I don't care. Go on.
Exactly.
If you want to translate it,
Turkey is important because we need to have Turkey on our team so that we can nuke the USSR. NATO is still very relevant. I swear to God.
You can see it. I think all the talks about possible sanctions against Turkey, especially in the German political discourse, were just bullshit.
Yeah.
You have to look what Jürgen Hart was saying. He's the responsible for foreign policy of the conservatives in the parliament, and he said no, sanctions wouldn't be good because we need a strong NATO partner on the southeast flank of NATO, and that's I think that's the real position of Turkey. And it were Merkel's diplomats who were preventing European Union-wide ban of NATO of arms trades to Turkey in 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So this is very obvious.
You see, this all could have been prevented if Turkey became communist in the 50s. There.
But
the Turkish left tried hard, but they
tried very hard. I love seeing all the articles that came up have been because the U.S. freaked out when Trump pulled out. Hey, bad joke. They you saw all these really dumb reactionary articles come out of the U.S. I saw one in the Atlantic of why is Turkey even in NATO? It's did you not forget the Cold? Turkey is this Turkey and Greece joined NATO at the same time to prevent them from fighting each other.
This is also the whole discourse about this goes against the values and the moral or the principles of NATO. If Turkey is behaving like this, that's totally bullshit. This are the core values, so-called values of NATO, like bombing the shit out of other countries.
Oh, yeah.
I think we have to. This is the moral behind this.
NATO's bad.
It's a military union that swearsies isn't going to bomb anyone. We're just doing this for laughs. It's fine. We're all just friends.
Could you maybe like elaborate on like what the plan is for the like why like Turkey is doing this? Like what is actually like the plan like behind this, the aim? What is Erdogan doing?
Of course, there are there's not the one single reason. Maybe just to mention a few. First, Turkey is against any form of Kurdish self-determination, be it a nation state, which is rejected by the Kurdish freedom movement, or be it democratic confederalism, like they're trying now in northern Syria, Rojava, because it fears that it will affect the Kurdish people living in Turkey. There are up to 15 to 20 million people. We talked about that in the beginning. The second reason is that they want to ethnically clean that area, and we are right now while we are talking, we are seeing this campaign for ethnically like cleaning the area. There are more than 300,000 people on the run, and Turkey says, okay, we want to chase away the Kurdish people and resettle Sunni Arab refugees from Syria, which were living in Turkey because of the war, in this area in northern Syria where there haven't been Arabs the Arabs they want to settle there are from totally different places in Syria, from Western Syria especially. So that's the second reason, like resettling the people there. But like if you're looking at as a Marxist, you always see it's the economy, stupid.
Said by a famous Marxist, James Carville.
I thought it was Bill Clinton.
You mean Wolfgang Schäuble?
The Marxist thing is to destroy
Kerem
the
said
Greek.
it.
No.
Yeah, we're taking it back, you bald bitch.
So if you look where the main fight, like the fighting is continuing now, even though the leaders say it's a ceasefire, that's totally bullshit as well.
Yeah.
It's like Orwell. War is peace, peace is war. The fighting is continuing every day, and it's really heavy right now. And the most fighting happens at a highway called M4 highway. It's the main highway connecting Damascus, Aleppo, Kamishlo, Mosul, and Baghdad. And this is the most important trading route. If you control this route, you control the trade in this region. So that's why Turkey is also fighting for its piece of cake in this economical situation. And like the main pillar of the success of the AKP in the last 15 years was the construction economy. And they are having a huge crisis right now.
I'm about to say, construction is an industry that is completely free of any type of economic downfall and recession and whatnot. And it's totally not one that you just start sinking money into when you like have nothing else to do.
Yeah, but in northern Syria there is a lot of rebuild stuff to do, and that's why they want to have it as well.
Yeah. All right.
Of
So
course,
there are several.
when you need to make the brand new Atatürk Rec Center. Well,
yeah, actually, that was the thing I saw on friend of the show TRT World today, was where they very very calmly, very nicely explained Erdogan's plan for the peace corridor, as it's called.
Oh God, yeah. All the euphemisms.
Operation Peace Spring, I would call it operation for the revival of ISIS or something like
Definitely.
We can't call it that. That's too
in like 20
Yeah.
years, all those kids are going to be playing in the Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi Park.
Yes.
But the thing that really struck me though was I mentioned to Nick earlier where it was just like, we're going to resettle the Arab refugees there. They thought this was all good in the video, but they were just like, and everyone will get a house with like 10 square meters of farmland. We'll build all these hospitals and like facilities, and it's going to cost 23 billion. Huh. You cannot do that. They're all going to be terrible.
Yeah, you know what? Who's going to do that, or whom they are going to expect to pay for it? The European Union. So.
Oh yeah, true. Shit, I completely I kept that out of the equation.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like-
I didn't care until now.
I wanted to talk about that anyway because like Germany or the EU has a like very special relationship with Turkey. Like,
Germany
not
is the
only
EU. It's fine.
Wait, are you saying? Wait. Germany is helping Turkey commit genocide?
Yeah,
surprise.
It began with helping in genocides in 1915,
Oh, yeah.
Armenian genocide.
No
There's
way.
a very good book by Jürgen Gottschlich. It's called Complicity with Genocide, like Beihilfe zum Völkermord. It's in German, and like he's a historian, and he shows how like German officials and officers gave some tips and tricks how to deport the Armenian people into the desert of
They had a
Yeah.
BuzzFeed
Oh my God.
top 10 of like how to make your genocide.
I mean, in
easier.
1915, the German arms industry, like the weapons industry, they were sold 500,000 rifles to the Ottoman army. Back then, it was the Ottoman army, and they were also used in killing the Armenians. Or if you look, who gave the money to build the Berlin-Baghdad railways? It was for especially German capital, and who were building the railway system? It were the Armenians. The Armenian men were working in the construction site in that time, and after they finished building that railway, the families of these construction workers, of the Armenian ones, they were deported on this railway to the desert of Deir ez-Zor in northern Syria, eastern Syria.
Didn't you also like in the 90s after the fall of like the GDR and the Soviet Union have Germany like delivering NVA tanks to Turkey, which later were used to like actually kill people, like attack civilians and
Yes. Like after the fall of the GDR, there was a huge amount of weapons. They either had to depose it, but that would have been very expensive. So they said, okay, let's give it to our close NATO partner, Turkey. And like in the next month, you were seeing GDR tanks running over Kurdish women and children, and this also created, especially in '92 and '93, created a huge outcry in Germany because people saw, okay, now they are doing this with our weapons. And what happened in November '93? The Minister of Interior, Kanter, declared the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, as a terrorist organization. It was not just about geostrategical reasons. It was also because then you could say, okay, the GDR tanks are used against terrorists and not against Kurdish families and the civilians.
Well, one thing I just also wanted to quickly add with then, like, kind of going back to then the sense of the creation then of this resettlement area for the Arab population that Erdogan pretends that he's being humanitarian about, but
it's like Sim City if you're designing how to genocide people.
Actually, nobody asked the refugees if they want to settle
that's
there.
the first thing.
So,
And then,
but the first ones who are going to be settled there are not the refugees, but they are the families of the jihadist and Islamist fighters Turkey right now is using. It's the same thing happened in Afrin. So Russia gave green light to Turkey to colonize Afrin, and Turkey then told its rebels, or the rebels it controls in Ghouta, in eastern Damascus, etc., to retreat, and they retreated with their families to Idlib and especially to Afrin. So all the empty villages the people had to flee are now settled with jihadist families and Arab families there.
Yeah. But so in that then, like in the resettlement plan, I think a lot of people, and I think we've probably mentioned this on the show before, of me being mad at Turkey and the Ottoman Empire, as I typically am, that there's this very weird, in the worldview of the AKP and neo-Ottomans, there is a very weird like racial structure that then also exists, that then like, the way that I've always kind of seen it is that then Erdogan doesn't want, I mean, the AKP view of like this weird racial hierarchy is that like Arabs are less than Turks as well, and that although then the way I've always kind of perceived it, I could be completely wrong, is that then this is Erdogan kind of using that as a sense of like, yeah, we'll help you up, we don't want you in our country, like we don't want the Arabs from Syria who fled from the war to then integrate in our society, because there is this weird Puritan view of like an Ottoman sort of hierarchy of because it existed like that previously to when Turkey existed. And I mean, I could be completely wrong, but that's always how I've always kind of like read into that, is that there is like this sense of that they're not good enough also to then be really part of Turkey either. So we kind of want to like, push them out into these settlement areas that they also don't even really want to go to either.
So what I would say is that, like, in some ways, Turkey is a very hospitable country, like with a huge hospitality. So of course, it's a huge burden to nourish 3.5 million or 2 million. Nobody knows exactly how many there are. Refugees in your own country, so just expect Germany to do this. But in the last month, we have seen some racist hunts against Syrian refugees' families, or also small businesses in some parts of Turkey. But I think they are somehow made up in a way that, for Erdogan and the AKP regime, these Syrians are just a political tool, a political measure with which they can deal. So if they need racist hunts, they are just organizing racist hunts to increase the pressure on the European Union to say, okay, we have to solve this problem.
You don't want these 3.5
either you
million
give us
people,
more money and allow us to occupy a certain space in northern Syria, or we're gonna open the borders to Europe.
Exactly. I mean, that has been like his kind of like bait the whole time, that he said like, yeah, look, I mean, this weird relationship between like the EU and Turkey, saying like, okay, we have this refugee pact, and saying like, okay, if we actually like criticize what Turkey is doing, like from an official like standpoint, or if we actually like going to not send weapons anymore, or like stop this shit. I mean, like Erdogan himself says, like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fucking open the borders and let all the refugees in, and
Well, the annoying thing is, like, when that deal was being made, everyone saw that coming
Yeah,
from
of course.
a million
Yeah,
miles
of course.
away.
Yeah.
That this was going to happen.
But I think this topic shows that everything is connected to each other. So this is not just a conflict between the Turkish state and the Kurdish freedom movement. It's also about the European-wide policy towards refugees.
Yeah.
So Erdogan wouldn't be able to put pressure on the European Union if inside the European Union there would be a decent and humane refugee policy.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
to take away this tool from Erdogan's hand, you would have to change that policy, that the different countries in the European Union accept huge amounts of refugees and nourish them, etc. But so everything is connected to each other, and I think we have to. That's why a political demand has to be also the end of the deadly European Union Turkey refugee deal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see that how like in Germany people are treated that are actually like activists for Rojava, or like or even repression of like Kurdish protest against. You had that when with the situation with Afrin. When in Cologne, it was actually like they started to like say like, you can't protest anymore because it's too dangerous or something like that, like making up any excuses. Actually, also like forbidding to have YPG and YPG flags with you at a protest. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know, so yeah, I know the
Kerem, you would never do something like that tomorrow.
No. What is YPG? Is it a new sweet, a Dolce? No.
Video game?
Yeah, I think it's one of those video games where your character like can choose their own path.
Okay.
Okay, it's a Medal of Honor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Call of Duty. Am I right? Video games.
No, I mean the repression against Kurdish political activists and people who are showing their solidarity with those activists in Germany is like immense. Like, of course, my cases are very prominent in some way. That's why I don't want to talk about them too much, because I'm having a German citizenship, I'm having a secure job at the University of Munich, but the repression mostly focuses on people without German citizenship, especially on Kurdish people. So we have a very unknown case, but it's unbelievable. It's about Murat Akgül at the moment. He's just the tip of the iceberg, but I think his case is very it makes obvious how the German state policy towards these people is. He came to Germany when he was 5 years old. He's now 35 years old. He has 4 children. 2 of them have the German citizenship. He has an own house and a secure job. And they just deported him in summer this year. He is living in Nuremberg because he was carrying a flag of the YPG and taking part in legal demonstrations against Turkish state policies towards Kurdish people. So they raided his house, came in the middle of the night, and then they sent him back to Turkey. And he was just not imprisoned in Turkey because they kind of forgot to send the necessary documents with him, so that the Turkish state didn't know who he was, that he was a legal Kurdish political activist. So he flew again, he had to use all his money, all his savings to come back to Europe over a very dangerous route, via a very dangerous route. And now he was living in Germany again since July, and but as an asylum seeker, even though he was living in Germany for 30 years now. And now this week, they just put him, they arrested him and put him in custody. Because they say we're gonna accuse you of illegally entering Germany, and because of this accusation, the probability that he might flee from this accusation out of Germany is so high. So that's why we have to arrest him, even though he came to Germany to flee from political repression. It's unbelievable. I hope his case will be heard in the next days or weeks, but this is just a very recent case. Nobody knows about it. And I can tell you stories, hundreds of stories like this. Friends of mine who were born in Germany, living in Munich, they're 25 years old now. They don't get German citizenship because the government officials says, or the officials say your parents are close to the PKK. They have sympathies for the PKK. That's why you don't deserve the German citizenship. And cases like this, it's unbelievable. So I have against me there are around 25 open cases, but this is different because I have some public attention and I have a voice in some ways, but all those other people, they don't have a voice, and they're not seen by the majority kind of white society here in Germany. To continue with this topic, I think of course Germany is doing this policy to apply to the expectations of its NATO partner, but it's also doing it for its own reasons. So it's not just Turkey putting pressure on Germany. Germany is behaving that way because of its own interests as well. And for example, what is one of these interests? Rojava is posing a threat to the capitalist societies all over the world. So they don't want a concrete utopia next to Europe, where people could say, look at this, why don't we organize a society like they do? So that's why Germany is fearing any, I would say, how do you call this?
In quotes.
In quotes, like a communist society, which could be an example of how to organize a society in a different, more just, more fair way.
Yeah.
And I mean, anti-communism is one of the main pillars or the fundament of the federalist of Germany.
Yeah, I think that's an important message, because I do see that kind of narrative, a weirdly well-meaning narrative that has been spun into something that I feel like is very open to a general kind of Islamophobia or something, where it's just oh, poor sweet Germany has been bent over backwards by this evil conniving Erdogan, rather than saying that Turkey that Germany and the EU is complicit in this.
It is always genuinely hard to, because this is an issue that I think, at least in the United States, that progressives and socialists and conservatives will agree about, but they're not for the same reason.
Yes.
Because conservatives will be they'll go the Islamophobic route of Erdogan, they'll take the facts that Erdogan has been very actively helping ISIS as we've seen, which then now, funnily enough, if you watch a TRT World, says that
biggest fan of TRT World is
it
sitting on a
is,
table.
my fucking brain got melted today looking at this because they said that
Is that what you were doing?
Don't even mention it. By mentioning it, you make it bigger.
Shit, you're right, damn it.
You have a
That's not
lot-
how it works
that's
anymore. You
not-
Google Turkey once, and they're just like, "Oh, we
Yeah.
put you into this algorithm bracket.
Yeah.
Here's all the ads."
But when you look,
Wait,
but when
isn't
you
it
look
like
up
you get like on Twitter now, like ads come to Turkey.
I have so many ads to come to Turkey, and I know like
Visit
I am,
Turkey ads, yeah.
I
Come
like
back as a Greek.
come
like.
back as a sweet
Come and
little
you will
Greek
stay
boy.
forever.
Yeah, literally. I genuinely. First, they're trying to get me with cats. If I want to see cats, I'll go to Athens. Come on. Like, I don't need to go to Istanbul to see
Where
cats.
will we find stray cats in Europe?
I don't know. Yeah, fuck. But no, like in the sense of that, it is in the TRT World thing. It is really interesting because they said that the YPG was actually the one who released the ISIS terrorists, not Turkey. But there is like, so back to the conservative thing, is that like this is an issue that then people across the political spectrum like can look at and they're like, okay, yeah, Turkey's bad, but it isn't like. People on the right don't look at it as like a sense of like anti-imperialism. They're just like, oh,
No, of course
Turkey is Muslim and therefore I don't like them. So
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is
I think,
As leftists, we have to be really careful
absolutely.
about this because now there you can see like an involuntary coalition between leftists and conservatives.
I don't want that.
Me neither. So it's not against the Turkish people as a whole thing.
Oh, I've had to
it's
explain that so many times on this show.
It's against
made you
the
explain
Turkish
it, yeah.
state, the
Yeah.
state
Yeah,
policies,
exactly.
and the AKP regime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also not against Muslims. I mean, the Kurds who were fighting Daesh, ISIS, most of them were in some ways Muslims.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about. I think it's against like also politicizing religion.
Of course.
I think we have to be aware of this dangerous.
Oh, of course,
coalition.
absolutely.
Of
And I've mentioned too because it's been a topic that we've talked about previously.
Yeah, I've said it like several times. You actually like you also have Turkish groups that are like the communist groups that are supporting like
Of course,
Yeah.
in
of course.
Rojava.
Like the ones
And
in
yeah.
Serikaniye, like
Yeah,
there were
exactly.
a Turkish comrade, Kerem Pahlivan. He died in fighting against the Turkish annexion.
Yeah.
So it's not about Kurdish, Turkish, Muslim, non-Muslim. It's about state policies. It's about capitalism and like power fights for power or hegemony.
Yeah, because it's we've had this kind of question or like comment from other like from fans of ours as well who kind of view Turkey in a way that I think I was implicitly viewing Turkey before I moved to Germany, where like Turkey is somehow like very politically homogenous. Everyone is like, well, basically everyone is either like for Erdogan or Gulanos, which is very still different.
That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the two
There's
genders.
nothing else.
But it wasn't until I came to Germany, where there's a much larger Turkish community in Germany, that you see the full political spectrum. And I'm like, of course, yes, they're humans, of course.
But so of course, like the Turkish society is not a whole unity.
Yeah.
It's also divided and split into different political factions. But what we see that in times of war, even the so-called opposition, the Kemalist nationalist opposition,
I was just about to say
support in quote its state,
CHP,
even though it's not their state anymore. It's an AKP state now. We see that for example, Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul, who won the communal elections in March or June this year, just with the votes of the HDP and the Kurdish votes, he tweeted, "God bless our soldiers." So that's maybe that's a fourth or fifth reason why Turkey is doing this war, to break up this informal, but it was getting more and more formal coalition between Kurdish leftist forces, HDP, People's Democratic Party, and the Kemalist nationalist faction to break the majority of the AKP. And they were successful. Right now, they are like they said, why we voted for you? You're supporting a war against us.
Yeah, didn't you have like stuff, especially during the elections and also during the regional elections? And wasn't it like a CHP guy that was marching to, was it Ankara or Istanbul? I don't remember. And that the HDP said, okay, like we're not actually like marching with you, but we are like showing solidarity with like this cause.
Yeah, it was Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu,
exactly.
the one on the head of the CHP, the Republicans. And back then, also parliamentarians from HDP supported this march for democracy. It was, for example, Ahmet Türk, the back then, like the mayor of Mardin. He was now overthrown and he's not the mayor anymore. But yeah, he marched together with Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. But also Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu tweeted or posted things in support of their soldiers. This war affected the whole society, and if I look at it in my my origin is Turkish. My whole family is not my whole family, but parts of my family also supporting the war because there is no alternative media or alternative information channels left anymore in Turkey. Yeah. So if you just watch or listen to the mainstream media, you're totally convinced that YPG released ISIS fighters, that YPG launched rocket attacks against border towns in this region. So, but that's all totally made up. But the people believe it because they don't have any other information.
And I mean, you see it everywhere. Like you see it with like Turkish airline employees. Like
I forgot about that photo of them all saluting.
Yeah, saluting. Shit. You see it. The Turkish national team did it as well.
But
like
it's a huge public pressure. If you don't do it. They say you're a terrorist. It's like it's not easy to restrain or to not act like this, because if somebody some of the Turkish Airlines employees wouldn't have done this, they would have been kicked out of their work. So many of them are doing it voluntarily, but we also have to see the society's pressure to do it.
Yeah. I've read something about like a football player. Saying like, I know this guy. Like normally he is not like for the war and like for Turkish forces and the war against Rojava, but like he was still one of the guys like saluting. You know, it's kind of.
This kind of weirdly reminds me of like, and maybe Rob can back me up on this, but like, when you had like after 9/11 vibes in the U.S. This is not remotely close to an example, but like I just remember when like the Dixie Chicks said that George W. Bush sucked. They like disappeared from the face of the earth when it came to their music, and given like they didn't go to prison, nothing like it's not nearly to the extent of like with Erdogan, but that period of time between like, and even actually now, if you look at like an athlete like Colin Kaepernick, who just for like kneeling for the anthem has been completely barred from the NFL and stuff like that. It is kind of like a very like American, I don't know, for at least me a little bit like growing up in like the US, it is like a pretty American display of patriotism that you just continuously like regurgitate over and over and over again. And when you see someone not participating in it, then it is this like very odd, it's not even odd, it's just like that they're automatically deemed as anti-American or as a terrorist supporter or this and that and that. So it sounds dumb, but I can at least like, not that I relate to it, but I can at least like understand then like that, because in Germany you don't have that. You know, Germany hasn't been in a war, like an actual conflicts, and
so we just give you the weapons.
Exactly, yeah. You know, Germany.
We let other people do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Germany's always kind of had this sense that like, oh, you know, we can be like conscientious objectors and also at the same time entirely arm a nation's military if we want to.
Yemen, for example.
Or like in the U.S., it's like you're fucking in it to win it, and goddamn it, baby, if you fucking do not stand with America, then you hate America. And literally, that was President Bush's thing. It's you're either with us or you're against us.
I think this game works all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in countries like the U.S. and Turkey, where nationalism is very like accepted. But the mechanisms are the same. Yeah. So I mean, hundreds of people got arrested in the last weeks because they were criticizing or expressing their criticism on social media about this war. Yeah. So, and if you're then not seeing criticism even on Facebook or on Twitter because people don't dare to do it, then you say, okay, everybody is supporting this war, so I have to salute as well.
You were talking about like this. Annäherung. Annäherung between like CHP and HDP. And I was just thinking about like the regional elections where there was actually like a strategy of the HDP to not run in the major cities and actually like tell their voters to go and vote for the CHP candidate. And we see like that kind of worked because it was kind of like this double strategy of like taking back their regions, like especially in like South Turkey, like the Kurdish cities, and in the major cities saying like, okay, but here like we're going to support the CHP candidate as long as it's not AKP. So
yeah, but I think it was the right strategy, even
yeah,
though
definitely.
it created a huge criticism inside the HDP. But I think back then it was right. But now everything changed again because, everybody, I would maybe I'm a bit naive as well, but I would have expected Ekrem İmamoğlu not to openly condemn the war, but not to openly support it.
Yeah,
just saying, okay, no, we need peace, we need talks. He could have said that as well, but he said, no, God bless our soldiers.
Yeah.
So that's a huge mess. I think the Turkish society. I mean, that's what makes me feel so sad, because even if the people will be able to overthrow the AKP regime one day, the whole mindset of the society needs to change, and this change will take tens of years, dozens of years. It's because it's like the nationalists believe that Turkish people are superior to Kurds, to Armenians, to Christians as well, is rooted in, for example, in the educational system. For example, in primary school, when you go to primary school, there are some exhibitions in the rooms of the school. I've seen pictures of it, which were talking about the atrocities done to Turkish people by the Armenians.
Oh.
So they do
the same thing with the Greeks too.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing. Yeah, so they're showing like really brutal pictures of like pregnant women, and their babies were torn out of their body, womb, and then said this was done by the Armenians, for example, by the Greek people, and it's like still in the curriculum in some ways. And if you don't change this, I mean, the majority of the society is blinded and just believing all this nationalist and racist bullshit.
Fucking hell. Sorry, no, I really thought the Irish education system went hard on the British, but not like that.
No, it's really weird too, because I've met, like, I think we've had this conversation too, is like I've met like friends of mine who are from Turkey who like moved to Germany, and stupid me, I end up on the conversation of then like something along the lines of that, and it's
you
like
always do.
But
I'm shocked, Nick.
Yeah, no, but it, like, and then always because like in the sense of like, because there's these like in 1923 after Turkey and Greece more or less get their independence around the exact same time, because hey, it's after a war that they have with each other, and their borders just like got redrawn overnight.
There was no treat for the Greece Independence Day, but only for the Turkish one.
Greece used its independence in May when they got their independence originally from the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
Yeah, but technically it's also then a second one that then's on the day then the Turkish Republic is also formed. But so there's the border that then's redrawn or whatever, this and that, where population exchanges that then are a result of after a genocide, all that kind of stuff. But there's like, it was really interesting because a friend of mine was saying that then, what's the city?
In which country?
Izmir.
Izmir,
The old name. Yeah, exactly.
Smyrna.
Yeah, Smyrna. Yeah, that. This is one of the hundreds of examples of cities throughout, modern day Turkey that have never been one way or the other, or in terms of like ethnically Greek or ethnically Turkish. They've always just been kind of mixed throughout generations and generations of things. And how he was saying like just that, oh well, this city was always Turkish and you guys stole it from us, and then we like luckily then got it back. It's like, wait, what? Like, I mean, like, I don't give two shits who the city belongs to. But it was just amazing to me that like that was then like this like line of thought that then just immediately came out when it came into like that's not even an issue like in 2019. That's not even like remotely close. But
yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you compared Turkey to the United States, because it's a certain kind of nationalism, obviously related to all kinds of nationalism, but in a country that whether, I don't know how to say it, but deep down, the country, especially when it's a large like expansionist country, it is true that it's not homogenous. Whether the United States, Turkey, India, you could say the same thing. Okay. But you have right-wing movements, which is the logic of nationalism. Generally, it's this centripetal nationalism that you can't acknowledge because it goes against the logic of a nation state, that it's just people have always lived here in different ways, you know, but you have to like drive that out. And so it's almost interesting that, you know, a kind of a certain education would bring up like at a certain level. And I think in the United States it can be much more subconscious because it's not, but in Turkey where there's different dynamics, I could see how it becomes much more conscious, and you have to, and it needs to be actively pointed out that like, oh, the Armenians actually did this to us, or the Greeks did this to us, because you have to, people know is like, well, it's very diverse. How do we acknowledge this? And it's almost like the system is, a right-wing logic is kicking in to like justify why this single, nation exists, or why it's truly that. And the city
like a narrative, like a
exactly.
national narrative.
It can also operate on a single city level too.
Yeah, it's fucking bizarre.
I mean, there's a great book from Philip Teer. It's called The Dark Side of Nation States, and he was analyzing.
You telling me there's a dark side?
His main thesis is that genocide always comes with nation states. So, and he's looking at the European nation state, of the funding of the European nation state, and said, okay, the fundament is genocide. And if it's not genocide, it's just chasing away huge parts of the population. And I think one of the youngest examples is the Turkish idea of nation state, because Turkishness is something very new. It was invented in the 1910s, 20s, 30s. They invented an own language, they rejected the Arabic style of writing and adopted the Latin style of writing. So like Turkishness is something like totally invented. And if something is totally invented, you have to defend it, because otherwise it's if there is something which could show that it is weak and not real, in quotes, the whole system, the whole idea of the Turkish nation state could collapse.
Wait, you're telling me that Turkey is potentially not real?
I mean, you have that a lot, like with nations.
I mean, this is not just with Turkey.
I'm
following Benedict Anderson, who says nation states are imagined communities.
Exactly.
But in the Turkish case, it's very obvious that that everything is somehow invented.
And I mean,
and now everybody will kill me for that.
No, well, you were joking earlier that Germany gets to act differently, but it's because Germany, looked a little more religiously diverse back in, the 1920s, but they had their own kind of nationalism.
Like, I lived my entire life in Berlin. I shook hands with a Catholic guy once. All right, that's my diversity done.
So
maybe I think maybe one last thing about all the solidarity movement. I think we are with Rojava and against the war of aggression, which is done by Turkey. I think the whole solidarity movement shows the importance of the revolution of Rojava, because it shows that hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, Latin America, Asia, Europe, the US, are feeling connected to this revolutionary project. And I think this is a very strong statement. And thanks to the internet, it has a lot of dark sides, but it also has a lot of bright sides. Thanks to the internet, the people in Rojava, northern Syria, are actually seeing every single movement, every single step and demonstration and civil disobedience actions, which we are doing right now here in Europe, for example, in Berlin, where we are based now, but also in other parts of the world. So the people see it, and like a live stream, because I was there last year during the Afrin war, and people were literally like looking at their phones and seeing what people were doing to show the solidarity all around the world. I think that's what must motivate us to go to the streets and protest against the state policies of our state, but of course also against the Turkish state.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I remember getting the news alert on my phone that like Turkish soldiers had got into Afrin, and That was weird because like you get like a million news alerts about like something terrible happening in the world, but like that really did feel very, very different.
Yeah.
Like inside.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, do we like maybe also talk about like Erdogan and the ISIS story? Or
Erdogan is ISIS, ISIS is Erdogan.
yeah, that's it.
Khalas.
Hey,
You've
we
heard
didn't-
it here first.
You didn't. You heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks.
Breaking news.
But wait, so what, Kerem, what do you think about the fact that al-Baghdadi, he was what, in Idlib, miles from the Turkish
5
border?
kilometers away from the Turkish border? How did that fucking happen?
So actually, right before we started this podcast, I read the news, and there are some rumors, and I think they might be true that al-Baghdadi was killed, but they also arrested some people in the compound where he was staying, and there is the rumor that 3 of the people who were arrested are Turkish, and one of them is a high-ranking member of Turkish Secret Service.
He's a
So
grey
this
wolf
is-
then.
This is right now it's a rumor, but we will see how this will develop because there are strong connections between ISIS
It's
and
been where you've had like the internal, like I don't know what it's called, like the Turkish version of the CIA or whatever it is.
MIT.
Yeah, where they've been just like escorting ISIS across like Turkey and across the border. and shit.
yeah.
There was literally a camp that
I hate escort missions. They're the worst.
ISIS escort mission. Do not let the ISIS soldier out of your sight.
he just keeps like just running off and shit. But no, like there was even like there was all these things that were kind of ish reported on of them just like more of like just handoff services that then MIT had for
and it doesn't play any role in the political elite discussion.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like okay,
that's
Turkey's doing that, it's fine, but he's our NATO partner, you know.
That's
Yeah.
just what they do.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
And we have
Seriously.
there's a lot of evidence for it. It's for example, it was Can Dündar, the Turkish journalist who lives in exile right now. I think he's based in Berlin. He was writing about that. That's why he had to flee the country. Actually, he wasn't the first one who wrote about it. It were Kurdish journalists, but of course nobody listens to Kurdish journalists.
Just like how they tipped off that
they
Baghdadi was.
weren't able to flee. They were arrested and spent years in jail. But yeah, so there is a lot of evidence that the Turkish Secret Service supported, financed, and trained not just ISIS, but all the jihadist groups fighting against Assad and the Kurdish people there.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you have like
the
Turkish
US
proxies.
also supported them too, didn't they?
Yeah. There's this famous Al-Zenki group.
Yeah.
They renamed themselves now after their name wasn't so good for public relation anymore.
Weren't they formerly Al-Nusra or something like that? Or something
No, they were a
connected?
split of like.
Oh, of course, you know.
Al-Nusra is HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is Al-Nusra and some other groups. It's quite complicated because they rename themselves to disguise themselves. But
Just like how I found out ISIS has a new logo now. Did you guys know that? They have like a really cool, hip new logo. It's like
I
very
don't know
like
the CI
blocky.
of ISIS. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the old one was the really shittily drawn whatever thing,
They have
and now they have like a really cool blocky new logo that has the what's it called?
I think that's not too important.
It isn't important, but it's just they like there was I don't know but I like since it's the same thing with ISIS too though where they just like have randomly appeared again as like different organizations but that are still ISIS.
I mean, but maybe the last sentence, al-Baghdadi was killed in Idlib, 3 to 5 kilometers next to the Turkish border. He was about to move to Jarablus, another Turkish-occupied zone. Idlib is also a Turkish-occupied zone. He was about to move to Jarablus. He even had a house over there. So, and this region is full of MIT Secret Service, Turkish Secret Service members. The Turks 100% must have known where he is and what he's doing. So, I think maybe history will reveal this fact. Probably the Americans will hide these facts because they have to work together with the Americans, with the Turkish people, the Turkish state. Sorry. But history, like maybe in 20 years, we're gonna read a book with all the evidence.
We're gonna have
And
the
then say
Seymour
everybody-
Hersh of Turkey come and
It'll definitely all come out far too late, probably.
I mean, it is obvious, but nobody gives a shit. I mean, yeah, we give a shit, but I mean, like, other people.
Actually, Turkey was bombing prisons and camps
Yeah,
where
yeah,
ISIS
exactly,
fighters
yeah.
were held. So not to kill them, but to
Free them,
open the
yeah.
doors for them.
Yeah.
And we actually have seen it this week. 2 Dutch ISIS ladies went to the Dutch embassy in Ankara applying to go back to the Netherlands, and they were the ones who were released or like bombed free from the Elisa camp. So nobody talked about that, but I think this is going to be a huge thing because now they are also applying for going back to Germany, Belgium, France, Netherlands.
I'm sorry. I am in no way threatened by these people because these were criminals who are locked up. They break out of prison, assisted by the Turkish state, and go, do you know what we need to do? Go to the authorities.
That's how less they fear the authorities.
I guess, but
wow.
like,
It's fascinating.
Jesus.
Oh my God. Well, I thought I'd feel better after this episode, but
I'm so sorry.
no, it's fine.
Well, we should maybe ask you what our listeners can do to show. I mean, you talked about how important showing solidarity is, to show solidarity with the movement in Rojava.
Join the protest.
So we started. Maybe the most important point to show your solidarity is by educating yourself. By that I mean reading the theoretical books of this revolution, about this revolution. There are several books published in English and German and other languages, which are setting or making clear the theoretical implications with that coming with that revolution. I think this would be the most long-term effect, a positive effect. But of course, right now, during times of concrete war, we have to go to the streets, but not just protesting and saying, hey, waving our flags, but also showing civil disobedience.
Exactly. Yeah.
For example, by blocking check-in offices, desks of Turkish Airlines.
Yeah.
Turkish Airlines is owned 50% owned by the Turkish state.
Yeah.
They are doing services for the military in Turkey as well. So this is a good sign. But also our own enemies. I mean, the German banks or U.S. banks who are financing the regime in Ankara.
Or is it like Rheinmetall and
or
like
of
France?
course.
I mean, they are always
Rheinmetall,
involved.
the ones who are doing the tanks
Yeah.
which are used in northern Syria against the revolution. So, I mean, educating yourself, going to demonstrations and showing civil disobedience. But if you are a rich listener, you can also donate money.
Oh, yeah.
I would say the best thing is the Kurdish Red Crescent, Heyva Sora Kurd. They are the only NGO left in that region, doing huge and very important work, but they run out of medicine right
and they're
now.
also under attack by like a Turkish proxy. And,
4 or 5 medicine workers were killed by the mercenaries of Turkey and by Turkish airplanes. So if you're a millionaire, but if you're also just earning like 2,000 euros a month, you can like give 100 euro and saving the people.
We will put all these links in the show notes or descriptions and whatnot. So
good.
Which you will send to us, right?
Yes, I will.
And do you have anything yourself personally to plug, shout out? Where can people find you online?
People can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Kerem Schamberger. If you want to be flooded with messages from Turkey, the Middle East and Kurdistan, and if you want to have a bad mood after going and checking your Facebook feed, just follow me.
I get that anyway. You might as well teach me some stuff.
Yes. I think, but it's more important to listen to the voices coming from there now. And there are some voices. I'm constantly sharing their voices and tagging them and showing their names. So just don't follow me, but follow those people on the ground.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Then
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming. Like I said at the beginning of the show, you were one of the guests that Yulia and I wanted to like were on like the top of our list of people to come, and you came. So nagging you or having Yulia slide into your DMs works.
Yeah.
Yes, it worked. Actually, I am replying to almost all emails, DMs.
Yeah. So you hear that? If you want to get Kerem to come on your show, slide into his DMs.
I thought I was special.
He's the German Noam Chomsky. Just send him an email. He'll get to you.
Might take a while.
That was our show for this week. I hope that you guys all enjoyed it, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.